guys and to be here for the women's session. It's my favorite session of the winter workshop. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Sydney Brown. I have the great privilege of leading the women's ministry in the Delaware International Christian Church. Thank you so much, Patrick, for letting me share today. And the title of my charge is Noah, Righteous Through Obedience. That's a great title, right? Let's turn to Hebrews 11:7 to get it kicked off. Hebrews 11:7 says, by faith, Noah, when warned about things not yet seen, in holy fear, built an ark to save his family. By his faith, he condemned the world and became heir of the righteousness that is in keeping with faith. Now, this is in the Hall of Faith, so to speak, in Hebrews. It's referencing an Old Testament story, a famous story. We've heard this in Sunday school. But let's turn there to Genesis 6 to get the insight from the original story. Now, you guys got to be a Berean now because I'm not going to read all of Genesis 6. So you got to go and back out, read it yourself later after this. But Genesis 6, verse 13, it starts with simply, God said to Noah. So I don't know how God set up this time with Noah. I don't know if he ahead of time, he's like, we're going to have a D time, Noah. Bring your papyrus paper to take some notes. I don't know if he sent him a Google Calendar invite. That's how Harmony confirms D time with me. She's like, D time, ? Google Calendar invite. I don't know how God set it up, but I have a feeling God just kind of came to Noah and he's like, we're going to talk right now. And so here's a side note, sisters. If your discipler comes to you and says, we're going to have a talk, we're going to have a talk in Jesus, you don't want to evade your discipler, right? Run away. That's where the disobedience starts, when you don't want to meet, you're evading your discipler. But God says, I want to talk with you right now. And in verse 13, he tells him what's going to happen. He says that there's going to be a flood. It's going to destroy mankind. And this is why it's going to happen. It's because mankind is wicked. But Noah, I want to save you. And right after that, verse 14 through 16, he hops right into these very, very specific instructions, which I don't have time to read all of them, but they are detailed down to the dimensions of the ark, the type of wood, the type of coating, where the doors are going to be. It's so detailed. And like I said, I don't know if Noah, he had time to bring his papyrus paper and stuff. He had to just take it all in and take it with a great importance at that very time. I don't see the scenario of Noah going back to God and saying, hey, God, I just didn't really take that very seriously. Can you tell me those dimensions again? I had a feeling he had to keep it up in his steel trap, right? Keep it up in his mind. He was probably walking away 300 cubits wide, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide. Keep it up there because it was so important to him that he would obey completely, because partial obedience is really just full disobedience. And some of us, we've been told a million times to obey in various ways. We've been told a million times to do that forgiveness study. We've been told a million times to do that emotions journal. We've been told a million times to read Wounded Heart. We've been told a million times to read other books pertaining to our specific struggles. And we say to ourselves, or we say this to someone, it might not be to ourselves, but we say, I don't need to do that. I'm over it. I healed. But in the meantime, there's this trail of sin behind us, of all this toxic character traits and these numbing coping mechanisms and all this sin, and I don't need to deal with it. But here's actually worse yet. You say, oh, I do need to deal with it. I see that. You're an awesome discipler. But then you just don't do it. Now you have to deal with the disobedience and the deceit all at once. And so, anyways, Noah, there was none of that. There was no words, actually, when Noah heard these things. His next recorded words are in chapter 9. So it's 3 chapters, no words, just actions. And we see it in Genesis 6:22. Noah did everything just as God commanded him. One more time, Genesis 7:5. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Cool. There's no pride on Noah's part. He just obeyed. There was no I messed up on the ark, I'm not going to redo it. God's going to understand. There's no grumbling. There's no mistrust. There's no, God's plan isn't going to work. There's just obedience. And so we need to imitate Noah's ironclad obedience. And so I asked Georgina, I'm like, what are some major ways that women can struggle with obedience? And side note, if you don't know Georgina, you should get to know her. She's a very awesome example. She actually came around the kingdom as a married woman, but through a couple different events, she became a single mom. But she held on to her obedience. She's one of the best examples of a spiritual mom I've ever seen in the kingdom. She told me at one point, she's like, I was discipling 7 women while I was getting my PhD in microbiology and raising an infant. And I was like, this is a woman who loves God, so talk to her. What's your excuse for not obeying, right? But anyways, some things that can get in the way of us obeying God is not being completely open so we could get discipled, not being open about hidden reservations, obeying emotions above God, mistrusting the women that God has put in our life, not being disciplined, diet, exercise, time, money, trusting in ourselves so much we don't accept advice, or unresolved bitterness and church hurt. And for me, I've struggled with all these things. Growing up, I developed a very specific form of pride, a very outwardly obedient but inwardly super rebellious nature. My mom, she always uses the same word to describe what kind of child I was. She says, "You are very dutiful." And there's an implication with dutiful. It means you do what's right, but then your heart is somewhere else. And it was the perfect recipe. My parents, we didn't talk about our emotions growing up. I suppressed everything. It was the perfect recipe for breeding this pride of everybody's going to see me on the outside and they're going to see my character, but I'm going to hide who I really am. And I'm not going to be obedient behind closed doors. And so, long story short, I became a disciple, and I saw that I couldn't hide anymore. If I hide, it's going to have to turn to sin, and if I want to hide. And so I started to have to deal with my character, but this is a character that has followed me that I have to continue to put to death. Sometimes I'll realize, wow, I was feeling a lot, but I didn't say anything because I struggled with either cowardice or suppressing my emotions and being numb. And I need to work through that. And so, sisters, I really want to challenge us on that specific form of disobedience, an insincere disobedience, a disobedience that gives lip service, but is actually having hidden reservations. Sisters, I've seen this absolutely take people out of the kingdom. And the scary thing about it, it's the most difficult thing to detect. It's more difficult than that person that's just, they show their pride out there and they're disciple me, and they put all the ugliness on the table. It's sneaky. It's harder to find. But it can manifest itself in various ways. Number one, superficiality. No one knows your true heart or your life. Number two, gossip. You feel like you're too cowardly to tell the person that it actually pertains to or that it will actually offend. So you got to talk to someone else who's going to validate what you feel. You resonate. Number three, you resonate with persecution online, kind of hand in hand. Number four, you're afraid of D-time. You feel like sisters are trying to ask you questions and interrogate you. You feel like you make discipling very difficult. It's like performing exploratory surgery, dental work, because you're not putting it all out there. Another sign is you often say yes to direction and practicals, but you don't follow through with it, such as doing forgiveness studies, reading books, so on and so forth. So my practical to you today, sisters, is to get open with your discipler. If there's any hidden reservations in your heart, confess if you've been superficial or if you've gossiped or if you've not followed through with direction that you said you would. Number two, commit yourself to writing your emotions out daily in an emotions journal so that you can better detect how your heart feels about obedience. Number three, in whatever area of your life you feel hopeless about overcoming, just repent and obey the Bible with your whole heart. God wouldn't call you to do something that's impossible for you to do. You can do it if you rely on God. That's why he has you in that position. And so with that, sisters, thank you so much for letting me share. To God be all the glory. Amen. And right now we're going to have our awesome sister Tina come up and talk about what she's on her heart.